Creating a Visual Studio C++ console application can be pretty darn confusing. I'm going to show you how to create a simple console application in Visual Studio that doesn't include the kitchen sink, or in Visual Studio's case, 15 different kitchen sinks with 2,700 different options. No, let's just create a simple C++ console application that we can say, open, and do what we need to do for a simple program.
So creating a C++ console application, C in, C out, just your basic plain Jane C++ project in Visual Studio, Microsoft Visual Studio, is all about choosing the correct options to start with. If you don't get this right, you're going to get extremely frustrated. Let me launch Visual Studio. Now this is 2019 Community Edition. If you don't have it and you need to know how to install it, I have a video on that. So as we jump in here, you see I've got some previous projects, but these are not for C++. So I want to come over here, create a new project. Now here's where the magic is. We need to make sure we're going to create a console application. So that's the easiest way to get this is hit my drop down for all languages, choose C++, pick my project type, console. Now I don't want an empty project with no starting files. That's going to cause me trouble because you got to, I mean, if you know what you're doing, it's no problem. You can go in and add a file and then you've got a working project. But if we come down to this second one that says put code in a Windows terminal, prints hello world by default, and you see we're console C++, that's what we want to create. Now I'll hit next. Let's pay attention to my location. I don't want to save it in source repos, as in repository. I'm going to hit my drop down here, and you see I've got a folder under the nerd is in code C++. That's the location. And we'll call this project Hello World, because that's a good name, right? I was betting myself whether I'd actually be able to type hello world without having to hit the backspace key at least once. I lost the bet because I usually manage to get a W in there right at the end of hello. I'm going to create the project now, and it's going to create this project, put us in Visual Studio with an empty program, and then probably the first thing you want to do is come up here and hit your favorite friend, save all. Not hello world, save all. So what parts of the windows we have here? This is where we're going to put our code, and Microsoft has got some comments here to help us work with this. So they're just trying to tell us how to do a few things. If you want to run your program, debug menu, start with debugging, or start with debugging. So I could say debug menu, start debugging to run the program. It's going to be exciting. It's going to say hello world, and then it says press any key to continue. So that's what the program does. You can also run your program right here by just hitting the green triangle. That will just run your program. Very short program, doesn't really do anything. And my source code file, the actual file that has the source code, if I come over to my Solution Explorer and open up source files, you'll see it's hello world because that's what I named the project. If I had created my project and called it the Lab 5, it would have had this file and named it Lab 5. So that's where things are. If I need to add more source code files, I could right click here and add. If I needed to add header files or resources or whatever, I can add them here. For just a console application, it's probably all going to be in one file. Now, one thing it does here that's going to be a little different from most textbooks is you see it's saying standard : C out, because what you usually see in a textbook is this, and that's going to give us an error because now the compiler doesn't know where cout is. So what you usually see in your beginning textbook is include IOStream, and then you say using namespace std, standard, semicolon. Now the compiler will assume that cout is in the standard library, basically. That's the way to put it. So you don't have to do, every time you want to do a cout, you don't have to say s standard : like that. So that was the one thing I was surprised about with the console application, that it didn't put this line in here automatically. So I like to leave one blank line between this and my main function. And you can see some yellow lines here. That's the code that has not been saved. So if I come up here and hit Save All, turns to green. Now all my work has been saved. So I'm going to get rid of these comments right here. They're kind of in the way. And what I want to do is have something that's a little more complex, so I can put a few typos in this and show you just a couple of little common errors you might run into on the compiler. So first of all, if I just go to build this program, build solution, down here in my output window you'll say build 1 succeeded, 0 failed. So it compiled successfully. If you go to run your program, it's going to compile it first if it needs to. And if you have errors, it will flag them before it runs it. Like I'll take the semicolon off there. I forgot my semicolon. So now I'll try to run my program. There were build errors. Would you like to continue and run the last successful build? Well, you want to say no, because you're not running your current code if you do that. You want to go fix your error, and in this case, I have an error right down here. It says expected semicolon. If I double click on it, it brings me to the line where expected the semicolon, which is line 10, but with a missing semicolon, the error is actually on the previous line. So now I can try to run my program again, and it will build successfully, and it will run and then immediately finish. So everything was happy there. Save all. Let me get some more complex code here, so we got a little bit more we can play with. If I go into my code window, I'm going to right click and say open with Notepad just to grab this code and select it all and copy it. And then I'm going to get rid of all this code and paste the code I want. So now we got a little bit more to look at right here. So this program does just a little bit more. It's got a couple variables. It's got a constant. It's got an if statement. Now, one thing I like on if statements is I like to have the curly braces around the true part of my if statements. That's even if it's a one-line if statement. So I like to have it like that. So, oops, let me get that niceified. So now we could run this program, and once again I can build to see if it's going to build successfully, and it does, and then I can run it. So all this does is says if you're 17 years old, you're not able to vote. So if we look at the program right here, it's setting the age to 17 for my age. It's got an if statement to see if my age is less than the voting age of 18, and it'll change the message to no. Now let me make a common mistake here, just to give you another example. If I take my age and I do a lowercase a, immediately I get a red squiggly line and it says identifier my age is unidentified. So it's saying you have not created anything in your project called my age because it's a lowercase a. Remember, C++ is case sensitive, so it needs to be a capital A. So if I was to go build solution, see where it's giving me the error down here, I can double click on it and it brings me right to the error, and I can make that a capital A, and that error will go away. Now I still got another error, but if you can't figure out what the error is, fix what you got and rebuild your solution, and you can see everything was really good. Now, another common thing is you might, leave off a close quote. So if I leave that off, I'm immediately going to get some errors. If I build solution, it says missing close quote, and you see how it's got a lot of cascading errors. These are all caused by that first error where I don't have the close quote. So fix what you can, rebuild your solution, and once it compiles, you should be happy. So like if I come back in this program and make the age 21 and run the program again, this time it will say old enough to vote yes. So the program's running correctly. Now I'm going to hit save all. Up here, save all is my friend. You don't ever want to do save as. Do not ever go file, save as, because you'll be saving one part of your project somewhere else on the hard drive. So I'm going to exit out here. And here's that hello world I just created. So if I go into that folder and I want to relaunch my project, right here is my Microsoft Visual Studio solution. That's the file I want to double click on to relaunch my project. And that'll bring me right back where I left off. Okay. So if you say save as, it's going to take one of these, it's going to take this file right here and save it somewhere else on the hard drive. It's not going to be with the project anymore. Do you see how this project is a whole series of folders? You want to keep all this together. If you need to move your project, you come down, you right click on it, copy. Well, not move if you want to move it. If you want to make a copy of it to your memory stick, then you come over here and you say paste. If you want to move it, you go cut and paste. Now don't leave it in two places except on your backup, because now you're not going to know, is this the most current version or is this the most current version? So I'm going to just delete this one because I don't need it cluttering up my pristine desktop for the Nerd is In. But that is a quick run through of how to create a Visual Studio project. Hope you enjoyed it. There'll be more videos in this series, so please like and subscribe.